We're live, everybody. It is Friday, November 3rd. What a start. 1:15 p.m. Central. Anytime I make that face is because I don't know when it's going to go live. There's like a lag between go live and live. People wanted to know. That's why. I'm not crazy. Maybe I am a little crazy. But anyway, come in. Welcome in. Have a seat. We have a great show for you today. We're going to do an extended session today. We're going to do a few topics that are top of mind for me. Some pretty interesting trends that are happening in the auto segment and the EV segment and the self-driving segment. And then we'll talk about whatever else you want to talk about towards the end, the second half of the show. So let's get it started right away. One of the things that we talked about on this channel a few days ago, actually probably like a week or two ago, is that ever since we've had this dynamic with the legacy automakers starting to pull back on their investments for EVs and delaying them. So some of the stories we covered is that GM is delaying their billions of dollars of investments into EVs because they're citing some concerns around EV demand. We saw the same thing with Ford. We're seeing Volkswagen delaying a bunch of different battery factories that they were looking to invest in for their electric vehicles. And then there's also been this, in the mainstream media, there's been a continued sort of drumming up of fears and concerns around EV demand, how terrible they are, how potentially harmful they are to the environment, so on and so forth. And what I want to do today is kind of give you an example of the latest type of coverage that's going on around electric vehicles, just so I can bring to light the weird timing of this kind of rhetoric that's happening out there with the announcements that have come through from the different legacy automakers that they're delaying plans to get into electric vehicles. It's just fascinating, right? And I just want to discuss it a little bit because I think it's very important to talk about. So let me go ahead and bring it up. This is a snip. Let me actually add the video. There we go. This is a little clip from a Fox News show, Hannity. And I believe this was from last night. And Jeff Lutz on X shared this clip. Looks like he was recording it with his camera. It looks great. Great job, Jeff. And let's go ahead and take a listen to what the hosts, the panelists are saying about electric vehicles and their potential impact to the environment or how terrible they are, let's say. And then let's also read the little message they have here. Auto execs admit electric vehicles are not working for their businesses, right? But why is that? Why is that? The why is not really, I think, addressed. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
Yeah, and companies are walking away from this. I mean, like the big auto companies said, we're all in on the EVs last year. What are they saying this year? Oh, we're giving up now because we can't make any money. GM says we're out of a partnership with Honda. Ford says we're not making the trucks anymore. Even Tesla, the one people actually want to buy, Elon Musk is saying, I don't think the demand for these things is as high as it used to be. So when companies get it, and taxpayers start to get it, maybe we get away from the subsidies that are bankrupting us with all this green spending.
By the way, you have to literally pillage Mother Earth to get the manganese and the cobalt and the nickel using big, heavy equipment that uses diesel. And on top of the fact, 90% of our power grid, isn't that fossil fuel related that charges the battery?
Exactly. And you know where they're getting a lot of these materials now? They want to farm the ocean floor, mine the ocean floor. Guess who controls almost all of that? China. And they're going after it aggressively, and nobody wants to get in the way of it. So you think about how vulnerable we are. We don't want these products. We're forced to get them, and we got to buy them from the guys funding Iran and Hamas. How does that make sense?
Okay. Wild, right? And that little what the F in the background, I'm pretty sure that was Jeff while he was recording the snip. So I know there's a lot of new folks that are following my channel that maybe they're not super familiar with EVs. And what I like to do is just cover all sides. I just really view it as a fascinating thing. It's a clear shift that we're going towards something different. And now we're starting to see more forces coming to the front that perhaps are trying to fight that, or they're trying to present information that it's probably, there is a hint of truth to it, but it's twisted and turned into a way that makes it seem a lot worse or just completely different than what was actually communicated. So the first thing that I'll address on that video is the gentleman here said Elon Musk thinks that there's no demand out there for EVs. There's not as much demand as he thought. Not true, right? So what happened from Elon Musk's side is that he's highlighting that interest rates are making it very difficult to afford any car today, especially electric vehicles, which right now are on the higher end of the price bracket. And so when interest rates go up, what you have to do as a company is lower your prices dramatically so that people can still afford those cars. And that's why companies like Ford and GM and VW and all these other companies are delaying their plans, because they are citing difficulty around the costs of making them profitably. So it's not that there's no demand or that EVs are worse somehow, that people don't want them, is that the economics of this time right now, given what's out there, which is a little bit more expensive electric vehicles than, say, the normal car, are not making it work. They're not making it work. So they're lowering the price so that more people can get those cars. In addition to releasing a compact car in the next couple of years from Tesla, and other manufacturers, especially out of China and other places, are trying to build more affordable cars. So it's not that there's no demand. And there's many different studies we've shown on this channel that show that there's actually a lot of demand for electric vehicles. Is that there's a lack of affordable vehicles, period. And that's what's really driving it. Then the other point was around, which I'm so tired of hearing about, it is what it is. Oh, these things that we have to dig out of the ground. You're pillaging Mother Earth. This is terrible for the earth. And then the Hannity himself said, and they use diesel to dig it out of the ground. Cool. Where does diesel come from? Last time I checked, diesel doesn't just appear out of thin air and it ends up in your truck, or it doesn't come out of like some fairy dust and it ends up in your car, right? This is something that, oh my God, we also dig out of the ground. Wow, crazy. And we've been doing so for probably 100 years plus now. And there is a 100-year-long supply chain that's been built around that specific thing, which is digging the petroleum out of the ground and then putting all these refining processes to get it to be gasoline and diesel. And then we transport it all over the world with stuff that is powered with that same exact thing. And then what happens when you burn that stuff up? It ends up in the atmosphere. And I'm not saying it causes climate change. It doesn't cause climate change, but that's what's happening. So using that as a way of saying, hey, this is bad, is weird, because you're also admitting that the current solution is not great either, right? And then the gentleman that was bringing up some points around, hey, we have a lot of raw materials that we're getting from, countries that may not have our best interests in mind, so on and so forth. Okay, what about oil and all the different wars that the United States has fought to gain territory to have access to that oil over the last few decades? All the stuff that's happening in the Middle East. The fact that if OPEC decides to lower the price for oil, all of a sudden the entire market has to bend to the knees of that organization. And all of a sudden we have a place where we have a single entity that's controlling the price for oil. And so it's very, very strange that they're saying that, hey, there's something inherently wrong with EVs, but they're citing the same exact reasons that make petroleum also not a great alternative to powering vehicles. And if we focus strictly on, say, that the efficiency of the fuel source, so let's say petroleum, gas, oil, or diesel versus, say, batteries, right? There is a study that was posted by Reuters, and this is where this gets weird, because right now, because EV tech is in such a infancy stage, there's still a lot of studies that are out there that one side will publish that's pro oil and diesel, and then we have another side that's more pro batteries. And the two studies are always on the opposite side of the spectrum, right? But one that commonly is thrown out there is like, hey, you think that your electric vehicle is super good for the environment? Well, guess what? It's powered by a dirty grid. So what the hell is the point? And I think that on itself, that commentary is a legitimate one. It's like, hey, you think you're being all super green, but right now your electric vehicle is generating a tailpipe, a long tail that they call it, where it comes out of the power generating source versus your car. Cool. But even then, if we look at this study, this is when are EVs cleaner than gas? And this is studies from 2021. It's a thing that was published by Reuters. This red line is how much carbon essentially is put into the world, the atmosphere. And I'm not even going to talk about carbon as, is it causing climate change? Is it not causing climate change? This is not the point of this discussion. It's like, hey, what is the net result of the materials you're using that you're putting into the air, right? Almost think of it as the efficiency. This red line is a Toyota Corolla, which is one of the most efficient, most common vehicles in the world that people drive today that is gas powered. And this vertical line, which let me zoom in a little bit more so it's easier for us to look at it. This vertical line, come on, there we go. This guy is how much carbon is put into the atmosphere, and then this horizontal line, the x-axis, is over time what is the cumulative carbon that's put in the atmosphere. And this red line, you can see that with a gas car, it starts here, it starts above zero because you have to manufacture the car, right? And then after that point, it keeps going up. Why? Because you have a gas car. You have to fuel it up. And each year from, you're averaging, say, 12,000 miles a year, and your car is going to have the same miles per gallon, roughly, for the life of the vehicle. It's a very predictable line, right? It's just going to keep going up year over year over year. And what's interesting is, if you compare it to, say, a Tesla Model 3, which right now is the most efficient, one of the most efficient EVs out there, and the most efficient Tesla you can purchase today is the Model 3. If you assume that the car was utilizing a grid that was 100% made up of coal, just coal. That's it. Like literally imagine where in Northeast US, where majority of the power up there is from coal, and that's all it got its electricity from, it would still put less in the atmosphere over the after 5 years than a gas car would if it's 100% out of coal. And the reason why is because coal, even if you're using coal, which is significantly dirtier than gasoline in a way, you're still putting it in a central location. And the car is significantly more efficient than a gas car. So you're still going to put less stuff into the atmosphere. And we're not even talking about the US mix, the usual mix of fuel sources that we use in the United States right now. And this is the US as an example. This is the green line. So you can see that at the beginning, electric vehicles, the carbon footprint is more than a gas car because the mining of the minerals is not as efficient as we have it right now with diesel and gas. Again, because diesel and gas has been around for 100 years and EVs are very, very new. It hasn't grown yet to really get that benefit. But then after the first year, essentially, the amount of carbon that the Model 3, the US mix, is putting into the atmosphere from just your typical grid in the United States is already less than what the Corolla is going to do for that first year. And then from that point forward, the Corolla is putting in way more into the atmosphere than the Model 3. Again, forget about climate change, the efficiency and how much is it actually impacting the earth, as Hannity said, right? And then if you go to, say, something like hydro, which is this purple line, which doesn't use any type of fossil fuels or anything like that, because it's just water. It's just water generating the electricity. Or solar would be something very similar. Guess what? You use the carbon to make the car, given the current manufacturing processes, which is, yes, more than a gas car, again, because the gas car's been around forever and we've been able to work that out of the system. But then after that point, you're just flat basically for the life of the vehicle, because you're not actually putting anything else in there, because the fuel source, the hydro source, doesn't use any fossil fuels. And this gets lost so much in this broader discussion of electric vehicles. And I'm surprised that, say, a publication like Fox, which, I'm not a huge fan of mainstream media. I'll just come out and say it. Not a huge fan of Fox, MSNBC, CNN, and those guys. I think over the years their journalistic integrity hasn't been as good as I hoped it would be. But even for a publication like Fox, I think one of the things that gets lost in this EV discussion is that when you have an electric vehicle, what that enables you to do is to leverage your domestic fuel sources, your domestic fuel generating plants, let's say, at a maximum. Whereas with a gas car, you're 100% beholden to petroleum, and that is the only fuel source you can use, right? So when you think about it from a, let's say, domestic security perspective or an efficiency perspective, don't you think doesn't it make more sense to have a vehicle that can take advantage of every type of fuel source, literally every type of fuel source, because you can generate the electricity at the plant with either petroleum or coal or hydro or wind or solar or freaking hamster wheels. You can put people on treadmills. You can do whatever you want, okay? However dystopian you want to get, but that generates electricity versus just beholden to petroleum and that's it. And then you're doing that, you are basically confining yourself to very finite places on the planet that is requiring more and more inefficient use cases of drawing that petroleum out of the earth over time as it becomes tougher and tougher to get that out of the ground. And that's why you have things like fracking. I have one of my really good friends from that lives in Texas. His name's Travis. He used to work at an oil field, and he would tell me stories of fracking oil out of the ground. It's brutal freaking work, and I'm thankful we have people out there that do it. But would you rather have that everywhere on planet Earth, or just have solar panels and it soaks up the sun, and then you have enough solar panels and you can just power the United States forever, and you don't have to worry about OPEC, you don't have to worry about countries that don't have our best interests in mind in giving us that oil. And then even if you talk about, well, the materials from the batteries are going to be problematic because these materials are going to come from countries that don't have our best interests in mind. Cool. Don't you think that over time we're going to have chemistries that we're going to be able to manufacture domestically, like lithium, which is freaking everywhere, and we can move away from things like cobalt and things like nickel over time that are going to enable us to have batteries that we can manufacture ourselves, or say Europe can manufacture themselves, or Africa can manufacture themselves, or South America can manufacture themselves. We're at the beginning of this revolution, right? And so, I don't know. I think I've gone too long on this. I'll shut up. I'm ranting now. Let me show you one comment from the Rohan Patel, which works for Tesla, and he's basically in charge of a bunch of different stuff for him, Tesla policy and business development. And one of the things he said to that video that I showed at the beginning from Hannity, the disinformation campaign from our adversaries, Fox News included, will end up in the Jim Cramer dustbin of history. Actual people want the safest and best performing vehicles. Those are and will be electric. The fact that EVs don't pollute may not excite Mr. Hannity, but most Fox News viewers would prefer cleaner air. And this is like, it doesn't get talked about, is that the natural benefits of an electric vehicle is in the best interest of any given country's sovereignty and their ability to produce energy domestically and localizing the supply chain. This gets lost in the entire conversation. It's like somehow we've gone to oil is super American and super good for our domestic use cases, and that's all I'm going to use because we get oil from America and I want to support my country. It's like, okay, but there's also a significant amount of oil that doesn't come from here. And if we actually invest our time and make hydro, solar, wind, oil, gas, coal, if you utilize all of the domestic fuel sources, that is way better for us, both from a security perspective and a cost perspective, than just having cars that are purely reliant on oil. Doesn't make sense to me. Tell me why I'm wrong. Please, somebody tell me why I'm wrong. Okay. Next topic I want to talk about. I told you this one was going to be longer. We'll do our Friday versions. We'll do a longer version because sometimes there's just so much on my mind that I want to get out, and it's something I want to experiment with. This is a video from CNBC. This is Pete Buttigieg. I think I pronounce his Buttigieg, a bunch of different ways of saying his last name. Sorry, Pete. And here he is talking about the advent of self-driving vehicles, which right now, basically 100% of self-driving vehicles are electric. And I want to highlight again, just another potential attack vector, let's say, as Elon likes to call it, that the EV hate train might be riding on, which is autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles could be another thing that say, hey, I told you these EV things were bad. They're killing people. But Pete kind of highlights the sort of the dynamic that's going on right now really, really well, I believe. And I want to sort of go off of his thoughts. Let's go ahead and take a listen to what Mr. Pete has to say.
This worries me a lot, too, because our psychology is such that sometimes something that by the numbers is safer doesn't feel that way because it involves less control. The scenario you're describing, 80% reduction in roadway deaths is it's a safety triumph. And yet, I'm not sure that the American public would accept that level. And that's one of the reasons why we're being extremely rigorous as a regulator in the way that NHTSA, our National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, is approaching automation. It's not because we don't like it. It's because we know that both in terms of safety and in terms of the psychology of safety, it has to be squeaky, squeaky clean. Look, but
you'd read about every death where a person wasn't in control and in graphic detail.
Yep.
And then those manufacturers would be liable.
Right.
to,
So that's a whole other
to what
question that the
it
policy
costs.
world hasn't caught up with. Remember, the division of labor that we have in this country is that we, the federal government, regulate the car, and the state, the BMV, regulates the driver. Our system does not contemplate things like liability if the car is the driver, and that's part of what we need to work on in the policy
How does
space.
insurance catch up with that? There's a million.
Yeah, but the other end of the pot of gold, so to speak, at the end of this journey is that we could have a radically safer country because, frankly, the track record of human drivers is murderous.
So I thought that Pete lays this out beautifully. I really do. Politics aside. And the reason why is, and we've seen this, right? When it comes to anything related to a Tesla getting into an accident, what is the typical headline, right? Every Tesla accident that is catastrophic enough will always make national news. And what does it say? Tesla that may have had autopilot on, which is a self-driving thing, was in a terrible fiery crash. And just like the word self-driving or may have had self-driving or suspected to be on autopilot, right? That doesn't even confirm that it's on autopilot, but we've seen time and time again how mainstream media likes to highlight that variable, which then the public will look at and be like, holy crap, it looks like self-driving cars are potentially dangerous, right? I want to highlight another piece that sort of talks about this and kind of give you my thoughts. If you've been following the self-driving story closely, we've had GM's Cruise division, which has been wrapped up in a lot of controversy as of late. Poor GM is having one of the worst 2-week stretches that I can imagine of any automaker between the GM thing, the Cruise thing, and its earnings, highlighting how they're delaying EV stuff and whatever. But the strikes, let's not even talk about the strikes and how much that's going to cost them. But there's a piece here from the New York Times that is highlighting stuff that's going on with Cruise. Cruise grew fast and angered regulators. Now it's dealing with the fallout. And of course, what's Cruise? Cruise is a self-driving technology. The company, a General Motors subsidiary, has hired a law firm to investigate how it responded to regulators as its cars sit idle and questions grow about its CEO's expansion plans. This was posted, I believe, earlier today, November 3rd at 11:03 a.m. Eastern, which was about 3 hours ago or so, call it. So here's another thing that highlights something that's going on with self-driving vehicles. Now, this news piece has merit because what ended up happening is the Cruise vehicle, in case you're not familiar, there was a hit and run where a car that was being driven by an actual person hit an individual, which then was thrown in front of the Cruise car. The Cruise car tried to stop, ran over the person, and then to get out of the road, it pulled itself to the side, dragged the person under the car for another 20 feet, and then stopped. And then now GM and Cruise are in a huge thing with regulators about, hey, why didn't you show me that video snippet at first, because it looks like Cruise may have withheld that information, right? So here's a legitimate situation where something bad has happened with a self-driving car, but the fears around the self-driving car are going to be talked about very loudly for a really long time. And the reason why is with how the media works, anything that can drive fear or doubt or uncertainty, FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt will always get more clicks. And even though this story should be covered, it's going to be covered disproportionately versus everything else. So expect this kind of noise to continue around the potential not safety of self-driving vehicles. But we also have to ensure, and this is where I agree with Pete wholeheartedly, and I hope the Department of Transportation is actually acting in this way. When it comes to the net effect of self-driving cars, they're so much safer than humans because humans are truly some of the worst drivers the worst drivers out there. Something like 40,000 deaths per year in the United States. Almost 1 million people die yearly on the roads from driving. In the United States, drunk driving and distracted driving are still huge, huge problems. But we should also be vigilant about systems that do not perform well or they don't live up to those standards, because for this technology to be adopted, it has to pass a level of scrutiny that's going to be very, very high, and rightfully so. Because if we're going to say, hey, machine, hey, AI, I trust you with my life, boy, does it have to be good. does it have to be good? And I think over time what will happen is that as people get to experience the technology and local governments allow things like, hopefully Cruise can get its stuff together, but let's say Waymo and Tesla, once it goes to level 4, they operate and they're collecting all that data. Hopefully over time, they will really show just how much safer they are, and we can minimize the deaths to hopefully 0. It's probably going to be impossible to get them down to 0, but if we get them from 40,000 to say 4,000, that's a giant victory. Even 8,000 is a giant victory, right? A little bit more about this Cruise article, though, because I do think it's worth highlighting. And some of the difficulties of self-driving vehicles is that the speed at which some companies are going to solve the problem versus trying to be a little bit more cautious is going to be a big driver on how aggressive the regulators are going to be in allowing this technology to actually come to fruition. Like how the companies behave is going to heavily dictate how people like Pete and his departments will actually are going to be willing to let the technology come forth. And so if we read a little bit of a snippet from the New York Times, here is a piece that says, Cruise employees worry that there is no easy way to fix the company's problems, said 5 former and current employees and business partners, while its rivals fear Cruise's issues could lead to tougher driverless car rules for all of them. Company insiders are putting the blame for what went wrong on a tech industry culture led by 38-year-old Mr. Vogt, I hope I pronounced his name right, that prioritized speed over safety. So that's like an example of, and again, New York Times, in my opinion, does some things well, but when it comes to some of the stuff, it also has a certain angle. But let's just assume, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, and let's say this is somewhat accurate, that this is what was what actually happened, right? I think this really highlights, hey, there is a very specific way you have to handle the self-driving technology, because if you are not performing at a really high level and really ensuring that you're getting the trust of the customer, in the long term, it's going to make it very, very difficult for everybody else to reach that, say, arbitrary threshold or that unrealistically high threshold that regulators might put on the technology. And that could become a very, very big issue. Now, as far as how Cruise themselves were handling this technology, and I think this kind of highlights sort of how difficult this is and why I think certain companies are going to have a natural advantage versus others. GM has spent an average of $588 million a quarter on Cruise over the past year, a 42% increase from a year ago. Each Chevy Bolt, which is what they use for the self-driving cars, it's like a little compact 4-door electric vehicle, that they operate costs $150,000 to $200,000 according to a person familiar with its operations. And what's important to know is that this $150,000 to $200,000 is not just the cost of the vehicle; it's the cost of the vehicle plus all the other sensors that go on top of it: the lidar, the radar, the sonar, the cameras, the God knows what else they put on those cars. So that's an all-in cost. So like the cost of the Bolt is like, I don't know, like 20, 30 grand. So, and then on top of that is the sensors, which total up to 150 to 200. So the sensors are at least 120 to $170,000, let's call it. And then this one's a real shocker. Half of Cruise's 400 cars were in San Francisco when the driverless operations were stopped. Those vehicles were supported by a vast operations staff with 1.5 workers per vehicle. The workers intervened to assist the company's vehicles every 2.5 to 5 miles, according to 2 people familiar with its operations. In other words, they frequently had to do something to remotely control a car after receiving a cellular signal that it was having problems. If this is true, if this is accurate, this is quite damning when it comes to how Cruise was operating, I think, as far as a level 4 autonomy system. So 1.5 workers per vehicle and somebody jumping in every 2.5 to 5 miles means that on average, you're going to have more drivers driving a self-driving vehicle than a vehicle that requires a driver. There's more people driving a self-driving vehicle than a regular car, than a non-self-driving car. This is weird, but it really highlights just how difficult this technology is. And so if we look at how other players are doing it, let's say Waymo, I think, is approaching it in a very similar manner, but they're not having these kinds of issues. So I'm assuming their sensor suite and the algorithms they put in place are more comprehensive. But then if you compare it to somebody like a Tesla, who is not level 4, my dogs are going crazy right now. Sorry about that. Who is not level 4, and they're working on, sorry. Okay. Who is not level 4 and they are working on getting to level 4. The way their system works is you have somebody behind the wheel. They're constantly monitoring the car at all times. And then the car will make sure that they're there behind the wheel, and then they can intervene when the car needs to be pushed around, say in the self-driving mode. Tesla's current level 2, their full self-driving level 2, I would argue is better than Cruise's level 4 because you only need one person per car. And you can operate their full self-driving on highways versus Cruises, where it's just some cities only in the city square footage. This is not great. This is not a good way of advancing self-driving technology, in my opinion, because all you're doing is you're just opening the door for all the doubters to say, see, I told you, this is not going to work. It's too difficult. You need more drivers than you would in a typical car to operate the vehicle. And by the way, it doesn't know how to act when a person goes under the car. So it's like, it's this kind of stuff that's going to make the adoption of the technology very, very difficult. And we need to ensure that there are companies out there that are actually going to execute at a very high level so that the regulating bodies, in this case, Pete Buttigieg's team in the United States and everywhere else, when they see this, they are confident that this is actually going to get done. In a way, and I hate to say it this way, in a way, I think Cruise is going to make it more difficult for other people to get up to snuff. And I want nothing more than for Cruise to be super successful and to solve this for everybody. I truly do. And props for them hugely for tackling this on and really trying their hardest to make this work. Because I think in the end, it is a huge positive. But it really highlights just how freaking hard this is and how important it is to get it right. And one has to ask themselves, let's say in the way that a company like Tesla is approaching their system, because they have 5 million cars globally and all of them have cameras capturing the data, is this proof that their approach is actually the correct one? Where they haven't turned on level 4, probably for a reason. And now that we have this piece from the New York Times, granted that it's accurate, we can now see that, hey, these cars are not really self-driving. They're self-driving within a limit, and it still requires more than one driver per vehicle to ensure that it's operating correctly, as long as that is true. Okay? So, here we go. Let's do some Q&A. That was a long one. Okay. Thank you so much for sticking by, sticking around, however you want to say it. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe. I'm going to go ahead and have producer wife highlight some questions that we have out there. I'm going to get to them. I do want to hit something real quick. Looks like we have some news from, some pretty big news, it looks like. Let me just confirm that this is true. This is related to Tesla. Elon Musk announced today during his visit to Giga Berlin that a 25,000 euro Tesla will be built here. That seems like a big deal. Let me go to my boy, Sawyer Merritt, who's a big dog. Okay, he reposted it. Okay. I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but this is coming from Gigafactory Berlin News, so I'm assuming it's correct and accurate. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Cool. All right, so it looks like a compact car is going to be built in Europe, out of Berlin. 25,000 euro car. Great. That's awesome. And that's the kind of stuff that needs to happen, right? One of the first topics we talked about on this live stream is, hey, it's not that people don't want EVs, is that people want EVs they can afford, because it's still quite expensive. A $38,000 Model 3 in the United States is still unaffordable by a huge majority of the population, because a huge majority of the population can't even afford a new car. They can't even afford a new car. So how would you expect them to afford a $38,000 car? So, all right, let's hit up some questions. Thank you all again so much. And here we go. What is the difference between EV hate and anti-EV hate? I don't know. I didn't word my title right, eh? Let's go ahead and fix that right now. So what is the difference between EV hate? Okay, let me get the anti out. Thank you for calling this out. Yeah. Edit, remove the anti, and save. All right, we're good. If you refresh, the title should have been updated. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Per Johan. You're awesome. We don't need autonomous vehicles to drastically reduce traffic deaths. The common ADAS features will do wonders. I agree with that. I do think that the added safety of the driver assistance systems, automated driver assistance systems, I think is what ADAS stands for. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's already going to do huge, right? But I still think like if you get to a point where most of the drive is going to be handled by the car, and then for that one little bit, the driver may say is not paying attention because the car is so good, that's going to present a lot of problems. And I think in the long term, having self-driving vehicles are going to bring so much value to the economy, because now you're going to move away from people that can't afford a car today are going to be able to go from point A to point B for pennies on the dollar, like so cheap. And that's going to open up a giant portion of the economy it's going to open up everything to a lot of people that haven't been able to access it before. So self-driving autonomous vehicles in the long term are not just a lifesaver, literally, but they're also a huge economic boost and an enabler for people that will allow them to go up the ladder economically. It truly will. And I think that is very underrated as well. But that's a great call out. Thank you. James Farzad. James is one of my favorite follows, man. Thank you so much for the question. Another week goes by, and here I sit thinking about, what about the riff? I promise I'm working on a couple songs. I'll play them for you. I promise it's coming. Thank you, James, for the question. The riffs will come. Giddy up. Tony, longtime supporter. Thank you, brother, for the question. If sustainable Cybertruck demand maxes at 200 to 250,000 per year, at one ramp production line, will Tesla make the normal truck to take more market share? Reference annual F-150 sales is 750,000. Total truck market's 2 million. So I think the 750,000, Tony, is actually all F-series trucks, not just F-150. I believe F-150 is about 500,000. And then if you throw in 250s and 350s, it gets closer to the 750. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. I don't think Tesla is going to make a normal truck. I think what's going to end up happening is, and we're seeing this already, right? I mean, we're seeing so many pictures of the Cybertruck and so many videos of the Cybertruck. Let me actually show you guys this one. I don't know if you've been able to see this, but this is some footage from the Cybertruck. Oh my God, what did I just do? What a disaster. What just happened? Okay, here we go. Let me actually turn the volume down. There you go. So this is from X, and these are the Top Gear guys. Top Gear is a big TV show, a car TV show. I don't know if these guys are Top Gear America or Top Gear from England, but it looks like there are press vehicles out there already of the Cybertruck that we'll see probably in conjunction with the launch on the 30th. And look, here's the front. Check this out. And it's electrified. It's got motors, so that's nice. Decent sized front. I expect it to be bigger, but it's going to be plenty good, I think. Yeah, and there is the guy. Look at the interior. That looks sick, man. I want one so bad. But anyway, so this is happening. Like, we're seeing a lot of this now, right? And there's another video I want to show you guys, actually. It's a video of the little hidden compartment in the bed. Look at this. This is from Dima.
That's cool.
There's storage under too, right?
That's it. It looks kind of sloped, right? It doesn't look it looks kind of shallow. But I mean, it's useful. I'm sure it's going to be useful. You're probably not going to want to put any groceries in there. But it looks very well built, man. It looks solid. Like, listen to it.
Storage under too, right?
Correct. That's the cover for it?
Should sound a lot better when it opens, but
You'll fix it in software,
yeah,
right?
we'll fix that stuff.
Oh my gosh. So there's only
Cool. So you're seeing a lot more footage of this thing out there. So I truly don't think this is going to be it's not going to have a problem selling. It's what I'm trying to say. I think this is going to be over time as they add more lines. This will get to that 750, a million plus per year over time. I'm not talking about 2025, maybe 2030 plus, wherever it may be. Yeah, I don't think they need to make a normal. I could be wrong though. Could be wrong, but we'll see where it goes. Thank you, Tony, for the question. From Space Bubble question: Would you allow a robot to make you dinner if it said something about mankind being the problem with Earth's survival? Hell no. 0% chance. That's crazy. No way. Thanks for the question. That's like the easiest no in my life. Thank you for the question. Woodstone Bear question: Do you believe Elon's forecast of slow Cybertruck ramp and production numbers, or do you think he is sandbagging? Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I think we should take the company's guidance to their word, because there is a economic environment right now where it's kind of tough for people to afford vehicles, period, because of higher interest rates and the inflation we've had for the last few years. And so if they're guiding to, say, 200,000-ish and a slow ramp, I would say that's probably accurate. And, you know, in the worst case scenario, if you do that, you'll be pleasantly surprised. If you're on the other side and like, this is probably a sandbag, then you might be disappointed. In reality, though, and I'm guessing this is sort of like a question around the broader valuation of Tesla, not financial advice, I think the Cybertruck's success will pale in comparison with full self-driving's success long term. Cybertruck will be a penny in the bucket. It will be nothing, in my opinion. But so that's why I'm not too worried about the Cybertruck's ramp. I'm much more concerned about how will full self-driving develop, and will regulators now, again, with the video we watched and what's going on with Cruise, how hard of an environment is full self-driving going to have to actually get adopted by the masses and allowed by regulators? That's what I'm looking for. But thank you for the question. Will the CT have a fold down mid-gate? I don't know. That's a good question. I think on the 30th we'll get more information on that. It may, but we'll have to wait for the 30th. We're going to have full coverage of the event, by the way, on this channel. I'm working on a couple different things, so I think you guys are going to be excited to see that stuff. So, but if you do want to see more about the Cybertruck once it launches on the 30th and the coverage around that, come to this channel. We're going to have a ton of really cool stuff. Thank you for the question. Per Johan's back. Farza, can you please comment on the Tesla strike in Sweden? It is increasing. Yeah, I talked about this briefly on one of my earlier videos. It does look like the Tesla workers did not want to unionize. And the Tesla strike in Sweden, I'm not super familiar with that. So maybe if you drop a link, or maybe if producer wife can dig this up, we'll take a look. But I'm not quite sure what you're referencing here outside of that. The union trying to take hold of Tesla, and Tesla's like, nah, the workers are like, we're actually good. Yeah, let me know if there's more there. From Lab Experiment, should Tesla start 3D printing project house, human occupied, ultra safe environment, and use that to 3D? I'm so sorry. Should Tesla start 3D printing project house, human occupied, ultra safe environment, then use that to 3D print tunnels for boring? I mean, one of the experimental sort of videos that I did earlier on this channel was that I think Tesla could get into like housing in the long term, because, you know, they already have HVAC expertise because of, you know, aircon stuff in their cars. They know how to seal stuff really well with SpaceX. So I'm thinking, hey, maybe they'll start making domes on Mars, you know, because we need someplace to live. And it kind of fits within SpaceX's and Tesla's expertise. So maybe long term they would. But I think there's going to be some marrying of technology between all of Elon's companies. I think the overarching goal is for all these companies to come together in some way and allow us to go anywhere we want and live anywhere we want and move around anywhere we want. And I think that's the overarching premise for, let's call it the Musk empire. And talk to each other in any way we want and exchange finances in any way we want, right? It's like the foundation for the next generation of civilization is, I think, what Musk is working towards. That's the overarching premise. And I want to do videos on this too, because I've been thinking about this quite a bit, but yeah, I'm sure there's going to be something in there. Thank you for the question. Do you think it would be a good idea if Tesla built an off-road obstacle course at Giga Austin? That would be sick. Could you imagine, like, you drive your Cybertruck off the factory floor, and then like to get out of the to get onto the roadway, you have to go through like an obstacle course? Please do this, Tesla. Brilliant idea. Hopefully the shocks are built well. I mean, that would be great. And then you also have to have like a car wash, right? because you don't want to like just got your spanking, super shiny new Cybertruck. You're going through an off-road course, and then you're friggin' muddy and dirty, and then you're gonna drive that thing around until you want to push it through a thing real quick. That's a great idea. I love that idea. A question from TK2X. How many people will shoot Cybertrucks with a gun or bow and arrow in the first year they're released? A lot. And hopefully the owners are shooting their own cars and it's not some random person being like, I saw that on TikTok, let me try and shoot it because I bet you it's not going to go through. I hope that doesn't happen. I don't think that's people. I think people are much more reasonable to that. Maybe we'll have like a one-off situation where some crazy person's doing that. But I mean, the Cybertruck can handle it, so that's a good thing. So, yeah, but I expect a lot of content. You know how there's like these videos of iPhones? What's the one guy? Jerry Rig Everything, I think. He has a channel where, anytime a new Apple product or whatever product comes out, he tries to destroy it. Yeah, the Cybertruck's going to be viral content to the extreme when it comes to that stuff. And that's going to be a marketing thing on its own. And like people talk about it like Cybertruck is the greatest billboard on earth, and it will be. The hype train will only get louder the closer we get to the 30th. And then for the rest of the year into next year, the amount of footage, content, music videos, one-off viral content from people just recording this stuff, content on this channel maybe, it's gonna make this thing probably be the most successful product launch in history, if I were to guess. Let's do another one. Do you think Cruz's license was pulled because they pulled over with someone under the car or because they lied about it? I feel like a human could have done the same without knowing a person was underneath. Both. It's so the Department of Transportation of California, that was the two reasons, is that they didn't handle the situation safely and they withheld footage. And that's the reason why they got suspended. It's unfortunate. It's a super unfortunate situation. How come your outro music is reggae, rock, steady, and not metal? Because I like all kind of music, bro. Because it's vibing. I'm more about like the vibe. I like it when there is a good vibe in the song, And I do like reggae a lot. Reggae is cool. From Cricks. I don't even know. Question. I've been a Tesla owner since 2015 and experienced the improvement in FSD. Do you think FSD will be able to maneuver in close call scenarios like moving the car into and out of tight spots? Absolutely. I don't think there's any doubt that it will be able to do that. I believe the company stated that there's about a 1-inch accuracy with the vision system, and any gaps they have, they'll work to fix it. So yeah, I'm extremely confident they'll be able to get there. They kind of do that already with like the self parking, when it self parks, it's kind of doing that already. Now we're talking about, it's not super, super tight, but I think over time they're going to have to be able to do that to be able to operate in places like say Europe and say over time, like places like India, right? Like where people drive like this far away from each other, even New York. It's kind of wild out there. So yeah, I'm confident they'll get there. If Tesla gets new Cybertruck reservations while ramping up, in what year will Tesla be done producing reservations? It's all highly dependent on how many reservations they get. If say they have over 1 million reservations now, it's going to take them, if they max out at 250,000 per year, it's going to take them at least 4 years. It's probably going to be closer to 5 to 6 years, right? So that's why the 250,000 number to me seems low, but I could be wrong. They could offset that with higher pricing and those sales will come back. So I think the ultimate goal here for Tesla should be just make a truck that's affordable and sick, and then the rest will take care of itself. And yeah, there will be a long wait, but it is what it is. That's what happens when you make a killer product. People are going to have to wait. And they'll have to figure out how to produce more. If Falcon Heavy sent a Roadster to space, will Starship send a Cybertruck, please? Okay, if somebody from Tesla SpaceX is watching this, can you please get this in front of Elon and just make it happen? Can you imagine having a stainless steel Starship sending a stainless steel Cybertruck into space? Somebody please make this happen. I know somebody's got to be watching that can make this happen. But they probably already thought of it, hopefully. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Great work, Farzad. You're amazing. You're amazing. Thank you very much for the support, man. I appreciate you. Let's do just a couple more. We've had a lot of questions come through, and I want to make sure we hit as many as we can here. We'll do 10 more minutes. We'll do 10 more minutes. Do you think GM fabricated the entire Cruise accident to hinder EV revolution? No. There is 0% chance they did this on purpose. I think it just highlights how difficult it is to have just a technology that's on the bleeding edge that needs to be executed at a very high level. There's 0% chance this was fabricated. 0%. Nobody would want to. This is like such a bad idea to fabricate this. The amount of like stuff you open yourself up to is kind of wild. It's kind of wild. Let's see. Let's do another question here. If SpaceX goes public, would you sell any shares of Tesla to purchase? No, I probably, I would want to add, if anything. There is rumors that Starlink is, not financial advice, there's rumors that Starlink will IPO probably in the next year or two, now that SpaceX has reached cash flow neutral. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for sure. It's such a waste of a Cybertruck. Send it to me instead of space. Yeah, for real. That would be nice. That would be real nice. Let's see. They're not putting a Cybertruck into space. They're going to put a Cybertruck on the moon. It'd be like one of those like rovers that goes around the surface. That'd be sick. That'd be really, really cool. What do you want to be Tesla's model when they advertise? Built for tough, let's go places. Just, I don't know. Just make it sick. I've been saying that one of the coolest things they could do for, advertising and marketing is a big discussion around Tesla because, they're really the only automaker that doesn't really do it, especially in America and in the United States. Just make the sickest possible Super Bowl commercial you could come up with and just have it be insane. Just have it be ridiculous. Freaking put a bomb under the Cybertruck or something. It's not going to survive that. But no, just have the footage of it being shot up, have it go through some crazy obstacle course, have it pull an F-250 uphill if it can do that. Just make it the most ridiculous, obnoxious thing you could ever do with the truck and just make sure that there's zero doubt that this is the most tough product that's out there because that's how they're selling it. That's, if you're going to make it stainless steel and be able to be bulletproof to a 45 and a 9 and a freaking bow and arrow, then you should lean into that hardcore and have visual examples that exemplify that. I think Americans love that. We love that kind of stuff. So I would be for that. But again, I'm not a marketing or advertising expert. I'm not an expert at anything. So take anything I said with a grain of salt. Do you think GM fabricated? Oh yeah, we already talked about this. No, I do not think they did. If Tesla would like to sell more cars during this period of weakening demand due to high interest rates, why not leverage some of their $26 billion in cash to create a financing arm? That's a very interesting question. I believe, and I'm not an expert at this at all, but I believe they're still beholden to the rates that are set by the Federal Reserve. So even under that scenario, and they come up with their own financing arm, they might still not be able to have an affordable Cybertruck or an affordable vehicle as much as they want to. So lowering the price is going to be way more effective than come out with their own financing arm. I think over time they'll do that for sure. Once say the interest rate environment eases up a little bit and it makes more sense for them to do that. And they say have more cash on their balance sheet and they're comfortable with the future trajectory or more comfortable with the future trajectory of the economy. And, some of these wars that are going on around the world are not too disruptive in how they're thinking about the company's, ability to grow for the foreseeable future. I think it's going to make a lot of sense for them to do that. So, but right now, I was on the camp before of them doing that, but I think the tone from the company is very cautious, and so I would be surprised if they do something like this. But I could be wrong. J-Mac, if FSD is so close, why aren't cars self-driving from assembly to storage lots on Tesla property? Yeah, that would be sick if they start doing that. For that to work, they would have to do the smart summon type of self-driving. And what I find from my own experience with full self-driving is that surprisingly, the self-driving in, say, parking lots and non-roads is not nearly as good as the self-driving in city streets or on highways. And supposedly version 12, which is that end-to-end neural net stack, basically the AI brain that controls the car, let's say, that version should be better at handling this situation. So maybe with version 12, we start seeing that. So, but once they start doing that, you can see how Tesla can leverage its own technology to be more efficient. And one of the advantages they have as a company versus, say, like a GM. GM won't be able to do that. Or at least it doesn't seem like they'll be able to do that, especially with the stuff that's going on with Cruise as of late. Have you entered the Cybertruck event lottery? Yes, I have. I hope you did too. If you're a Tesla investor, you can go on your thing on your account. You should be able to sign up for the Cybertruck event. And I believe today's the last day. So make sure you do that. In the future, will we be able to control AI, or will AI control us? I mean, if it's the second part, if it's AI control us, I don't want any part of that future. So I'm going to go for the first one. I'm going to say we're going to be able to control AI, and it's going to be great, even though there is a lot of complexities and difficult things we have to solve in order to get to that point. And I've posted some stuff about AI on my channel. The Prime Minister of the UK and Elon just had a discussion yesterday, which we posted on here. And yeah, it's Pandora's box in a way that could get us to an incredible future, but it comes with so many different landmines we have to navigate through that it could pose a lot of problems. But I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that will be a great thing. I really am. It's just we have to talk about the difficult stuff that we're going to have to face. Would the U.S. EV market be stronger if we had Chinese companies EVs here in the U.S. like BYD and NIO? Tesla won't take all the heat, good options by others. Yeah, I mean the China conversation I think has a lot of complexities because of all the tariffs that are in place, which are going to make Chinese EVs way more expensive than they would be, say, in China. Probably going to be like 30% more expensive, honestly, with the tariffs. Then you have the whole sort of like negative connotation with, oh, it's made in China, it's blah, it's crap or whatever. I hear that sometimes. So, but for the end consumer, I think that one thing that people might be missing is if we don't have domestic manufacturers or say your traditional legacy automakers that are willing to make affordable vehicles, the Chinese are going to basically go as hard as they can. They're probably even going to bypass losses for a significant amount of time to get into the market because they know that this is a long-term play. This is a 10 to 20-year strategy to get affordable EVs in the market because it allows you to build up a customer base that you can then monetize through self-driving and entertainment in the vehicle, right? So getting a cheap car that maybe you're losing money on in the market will pay dividends in the long term. And legacy automakers don't want to do that, clearly, because they have investors that are there for the dividend, and them doing a strategy like that jeopardizes the dividend, which is going to piss off the investors. They're going to sell the stock, and then the executives are not going to be able to make as much money as they are now. So they don't have the right incentive structures to do that. So from that standpoint, it's going to be phenomenal for the consumer because they'll have access to cheaper vehicles. But will the forces around tariffs and acceptability of that type of technology from a competing or a rival country be as successful as it should be? Who knows? We'll see. We'll see about that. Let's do here. What do you think the Beast Mode CT Cybertruck will include? This was talked about on the Joe Rogan podcast a couple of days ago. It will be probably complete guess here. Tri-motor, close to 500 miles of range, maybe an upgraded suspension system, better performance. Yeah, maybe crab walk capability, but that should be standard in a lot of them. I'd be surprised if it's not. But just something that's going to make it faster, tougher, go for longer, just be a beast, That's what I expect from the beast mode. What percent of video do you believe that Tesla is sending back from the vehicles? We hear billions of miles of data, but the LTE costs of pushing all of that data makes it a subset. Yeah, that's a great question. I think they probably, the one thing to remember is that a lot of that data won't get pushed through LTE. It'll be pushed through Wi-Fi once you park the car at in your garage. So I'm assuming a majority of the data will come through that. So the LTE costs are not going to be as high as you think, I think. And they've talked about how they delete a huge majority of the data because they're looking for exceptions. They're looking for specific things that are going to help them make the system better at handling exceptions, which is the most important thing about self-driving technology. You don't want data of a car, you need data around the things that are so rare that, like, let's use the cruise example, like somebody unfortunately being thrown in front of your car, and then you get on top of the freaking person by accident, and then you're dragging them for 20 or her for 20 feet. Like, that's the kind of stuff you're interested in, and that stuff you need to be on the road for a really long time. And I'm sorry for being morbid, honestly, but like, that's the kind of stuff that you need to capture. That's as bad or nearly as bad that you won't capture unless you're on the road for billions of miles. So, yeah, they definitely process a subset. They probably upload a lot. And I believe Elon, he may have replied to one of my tweets a while ago, or posts, God forbid I say tweet, from a while ago, saying that they delete a majority, like a huge majority of the data they get. So you're probably right, but it's more on the once they receive it end instead of actually uploading the data. So, all right. 1 hour. Thank you so much for joining us today on Friday. We'll try to do these Friday talks to be a little bit more extended. We'll do a Q&A session at the end as well and talk about whatever you want to talk about. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I have a video going live tomorrow as well, discussing the EV market. I think you'll find that very entertaining and awesome. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day as well. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone in the comment section for your excellent comments. Thank you to the mods for keeping the discussion always super respectful. And last but not least, thank you to producer wife for being the best producer in the world. Love you, baby. All right, everybody. Take it easy. Let's see if you remember how to do this thing. Bye-bye, everybody.